Alright, so about 3 weeks ago, I made an agreement with myself. And that agreement was basically removing all forms of stimulation until I hit my goal. And the goal I set for myself was $100,000 per month. And you might be wondering, like, what? That is like a crazy goal. It's absolutely insane. But it is very achievable because many people have done it before. You know, especially with the leverage of the internet. I see people on school, for example, all of the time. Like, there are maybe 100 people on school who are making $100,000 per month. And school is still like a relatively small platform. I believe that there are 25 million people or something on that. But when you compare that to X, there are like 500 million. And even X is considered like a small platform, like compared to Instagram, YouTube, etc. So if 100 people on school, that is a relatively small platform, can make $100,000 per month, then why can't I? And why can't you? So I basically right now I'm making about $8,000 to $10,000 per month from my online business, doing what I love, and that is basically like I am learning stuff, I am following my interest, following my passions. These are business. I like business. I think it's like a video game, you know, but then real life video game. This is philosophy and basically everything to do with focus and productivity. And basically what my life looks like is I am consuming content, you know, I'm learning, I'm reading books about all of these different topics, I am building my business, I am writing stuff, I'm creating stuff, and I'm teaching other people how to do similar things, how to solve the problems that I've solved for myself, how to achieve the outcomes that I've achieved for myself. And helping other people do this is unbelievably fulfilling. And this is how I'm making $8,000 to $10,000 per month. And this is how I'm going to scale to $100,000 per month. And the way that I'm basically achieving that is through focus. Because what is focus? Focus is basically removing everything that doesn't directly take you to your goal. And when I first started my journey, when I was still working in a 9 to 5, where I didn't have an offer, I didn't have valuable skills I was able to monetize, I didn't even have a good mindset. Then there were a lot of things that obviously were holding me back from achieving my goal. And these things are basically everything, all forms of stimulation. And what I've removed in order to get to $100,000 per month are 10 different things. And these I will tell you right now. I will list them actually. So first, one is drugs. And basically all forms of drug, because I don't believe you need to have things that mess up your brain, basically. I used to smoke a lot of weed, but it just made me lazy, it just made me complacent. I was just doing nothing and then like playing video games and watching Netflix the whole entire day. So that is the first thing, basically first things that I had to remove, like all drugs, including weed. Although I might believe that many of you think that is like a good thing, because yes, I used to say things to myself also, like smoking weed makes me more creative or it makes me more present, but you don't need it. You don't need it. It's like it slows you down a lot. It slows you down a lot. Second is alcohol, which is also basically like a drug, but it is like a socially accepted drug. That is why we call it alcohol. But just to just to mention you guys, like when I say drugs, that is why I like split it down in two, because many of you don't consider alcohol as a drug, but it is. But it's like only a socially accepted drug. That is why we call it alcohol and not drugs. Third is video games. Because when you're trying to achieve your goal, when you're trying to build a business, like I said, is also kind of like a video game, but video games will always be more rewarding and more stimulating than building a business. So if there are still video games present in your life, then your brain always tries to find the most stimulating thing, which is playing video games. Because in business it can take a while before you actually see some results. In business it's very quickly you will see results, because you will just have like new equipment, or you will go to the next level or something like that. The fourth is short form content. Because short form content messes up your dopamine first of all, but also messes up your emotional state, because every short that you see will give you like another type of emotion, and that messes you up, and you become very, very sensitive to all sorts of like emotions. So short form content definitely have to go. Also very bad for your attention span. Fifth thing is the sugar. Sugar will give you like highs and lows, because first when you eat sugar, you get like a high, but then you will have like a low. So first, for example, like this is your baseline of eating. This is basically, if you don't eat sugar, you will always stay at the baseline. If you always stay at the baseline, you will be always able to focus. But when you eat sugar, you have a spike and have a dip, and have a spike and dip, and spike and dip. This is kind of how it goes. But in these dips, you cannot be creative, you cannot really work, and you will have all of this brain fog. So instead of being able to focus like 100%, you will only be able to focus like here and here and here and here. But everything below baseline, you will not be able to like function properly. So if you have this brain fog, it is likely due to sugar, and that is why you should remove it. So the sixth thing that you have, or with these basically are all of the things that I remove, because these are the things that are holding me back. The sixth thing is Netflix. Every time when I was watching like a series, I become so involved, like so mentally involved in watching this Netflix series, and I just couldn't function when there was still an open loop. When I was watching a series and I really wanted to find out what would happen next. So even when I wasn't watching the Netflix series, like at night for example, I used to think like, oh, what is he going to do next? What will happen next? So there's always this open loop. So the best solution is just to binge watch the whole entire thing, but then you will spend so much time and energy on basically watching the Netflix. So yeah, it has to go. Now we get to the interesting ones. Seventh is YouTube. And I've always had so much trouble with giving up YouTube. Why? Because I thought that it helped me a lot. I thought that it inspired me. I thought that it gave me like a bunch of knowledge, but it is not really true. Like the drugs, the alcohol, the video games, these three I gave up a long time ago. The other ones, short form also, but especially sugar. Netflix I also gave up kind of a long time ago. YouTube took a while. I only started recently, like not watching any YouTube anymore, because I was telling myself like, hey, you need to watch YouTube because it gives you more knowledge, and you are learning from it. But when I really look at why I'm watching YouTube, it is actually not that. It is actually because my brain is looking for stimulation. I want to have that new dopamine hit of like having another insight or something like that. But am I really learning a bunch of it? No, not really. Because what I'm really learning really learning a lot from is like reading books. This book, Essentialism, for example, it is an absolutely amazing book. Or I have another one that I just started to read, or which I almost finished. It is The Power of Now. Also a great book. So when I compare reading books to watching YouTube videos, reading books, first of all, way more knowledge, way more in-depth. And YouTube mostly is shallow. But besides that, when it comes to the style of learning, because now you're watching this YouTube video right now, it is a very passive form of learning. When I was watching YouTube videos, I was like sitting in my chair like this, watching all of it, and you just let it happen. When you read a book, it is an active form of learning. It requires your full attention. So this way you are training your focus. Watching content is like taking it away from it. Now, of course, watching YouTube videos has its certain qualities, because if I didn't watch all of this content, then I wouldn't be where I am right now. In the beginning, when I was still like lost, when I still had a bunch of doubt, like when I didn't have any clarity, I binged watched a lot of content, and that is how I found out about this business model of building a personal brand, just going along on your personal development journey, solving problems, and then helping other people with the solution and getting money for that. And if I haven't watched YouTube, then I wouldn't figure this out. But I think that if you are clear on what you do, if you know, so if you are clear on the path that you want to follow, if you are clear on the actions that you have to take and how to take these actions, then YouTube basically is a distraction. And that is for me the case. That was for me the case already a long time ago, but I didn't want to let it go because my brain got used to that stimulation. So the 8th is Spotify. And this one was a tough one because music isn't as bad, but I started to use it also as like a form of like stimulating myself. Because when I really liked the song and it gave me like a certain type of feeling, I used to repeat that song for like 30 times until my whole dopamine tank was drained. And after you use all of your dopamine, you feel like this low and this very like demotivating state. So I wasn't using it in the right way. If you use music to feel like a kind of way, then it is always bad. Now, when I go, when I am with other people, of course, there is music sometimes. Well, you cannot remove everything, but to like a certain degree. Like I don't listen to music myself anymore. And if I'm watching it when I am with other people eating, I make sure it's like very calming music that doesn't give any type of emotion. 9 is basically I'm butchering this, I already know. Unnecessary purchases. Unnecessary purchases. Like a very big form of stimulation for me was just looking on the internet and buying stuff that I don't really need. So I stopped doing that. I don't go on websites like Temu anymore and like all of these things and buy a lot of unnecessary things. I only buy like clothing, but when I really need it, or I am buying like food, for example, or mentorship and things related that will like help me on my business, but not really any unnecessary things anymore, like just for the fun of it. And 10th is basically I don't know if you can see this, if this is too low, but here basically is ejaculation. Because first I basically did like no masturbation. It really is a very big form of stimulation of a dopamine hit. And what I noticed is when I remove masturbation for like a certain period of time, 2 times I managed to like not do any of that for like 60 days. And the longer that I was doing that, like the closer I got to the 60 days, the better everything was. I was like this bomb of energy basically, and this allowed me to get a very big boost in my business progress, and actually both times resulted in me getting a girlfriend. But then when I got a girlfriend, I gave in to like more stimulation, and then after the up, I had like a down. So now I've basically said, okay, I'm not going to do any of that, like, because 2 times what was actually like the biggest distraction was me getting a girlfriend. If I didn't, I would likely have hit like 100k per month already. So now I've just said to myself, okay, I'm very serious about achieving this goal, so I will not even ejaculate until I hit 100k per month. And all of these things I have sacrificed until I hit my goal. And this, if you just keep yourself to this agreement, then you will hit your goal no matter what. Because what is focus in essence? And this will I explain to you by the following analogy. I need to use a different one. Maybe this one. Yeah, this is better. So, what is focus in essence? And focus is basically this. This is you. Where you are right now. And let's say you have a goal, and that goal for me is 100k per month. And let's actually like use a better analogy for this. Let's say you are on this and you're walking on the street. You're on one side of the street and your goal is to reach the other side of the street. This is the goal. If you are focused, if you just focus on, if that is all you want to do, you want to reach the other side of the street. If you stay focused, eventually you will get there. But what will start to happen is you will start walking and walking and walking. And then here, will be like some of your friends. And they will say, hey, come this way. There is this football match playing, the final of the Champions League. But you say no, nope, because I want to reach the other side of the street. But maybe there is like an ally, you know, and there is this girl, and she said, hey, like, come this way. But you said, nope, I'm trying to hit my goal. And if you are relentlessly sacrificing everything that is a distraction, that isn't going to take you directly to your goal, because if something isn't taking you to your goal, then it is taking you away from it. So if you relentlessly sacrifice and remove all of the distractions, you will eventually reach your goal. And the reason why I know this, and the reason why I speak this with so much conviction, is because I've already done this before in the past. I was basically, when I was still in my 9-to-5, and I wanted to get out of it because I didn't like it, and I had a lot of ambitions. So I wanted to start my business, and I wanted to remove all of these different things, because I knew that things like video games and smoking weed was holding me back from me achieving my goal. So I tried a couple of different things. I tried to sacrifice these bad habits and these distractions in a couple of different ways. And what I figured out, because now you might be thinking like, oh yeah, sacrificing all of these things, you know, for you it is easy, but for me, you know, because I have excuse, or I am excuse, you know, for me it was the most difficult thing ever, because I was like addicted. I was really like addicted, and I had like the identity of like somebody who played video games and somebody who was like smoking weed. I was saying things to myself like, yeah, you know, like I have ADD, ADHD, so I just cannot focus, or I'm easily addicted. But putting these labels on yourself is very difficult. I've tried to get rid of these things for the longest time ever. And like I think about 3 years now, I tried to improve myself on the self-development journey, but I just couldn't get rid of these things. I tried literally everything. So the first thing that I tried, because these are the types of sacrifice, I'll write it down. Types of sacrifice. The first thing that I tried was permanent sacrifice. Because I realized, okay, you know, smoking weed, playing video games, watching Netflix, scrolling short form content, all of these things, they don't serve me. So, and like I just want to like let them go forever. So I will never do those things anymore. But that, like, back then it was the highlight of my life, because I was working a 9-to-5 that I didn't like. I was building my business, but I was like a very beginner. And if you are just beginning in something, you are in beginner's hell. Like everything that you do for the first time is horrible. You don't like to do it, like you're not passionate about it. So I was basically doing two things I didn't like, and the only thing that I was enjoying was smoking weed and playing video games, because that was the most stimulating. That was how I could escape the reality and escape all of these negative thought patterns that I had. But now, because I realized, like, okay, if I'm doing my 9-to-5 because I needed some cash flow, and if I'm going to build my business because I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, and I also have these bad habits, then I cannot see any results in all of them, because that is the principle of focus. You know, like, this is basically the energy. Like, you only have limited amount of energy available. Time and energy are the most limited and most finite resources. And if I spend that energy on, first of all, something like this. First of all, I was spending that on my 9 to 5. You know, a big portion of my time went to there. And then I was spending some time on basically building my business. Then I was spending some time and energy on playing video games. Then I spent some time on partying, festivals, friends, Netflix, you know, social media. The problem with this is that you can only spend all of that energy on like a certain different things. Instead, like, what is the principle of focus? If you, rather than spending on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, rather than spending your energy scattered across all of these 8 different things, but spend it on one specific thing, then you will make huge amount of progress, because all of these 8 are the same length combined as this one thing. But what do you think that the market rewards? 8 things averagely, or 1 thing exceptionally well? Of course it is this thing, because we kind of live in a winner takes all mindset. You know, if you spend a lot of energy in one thing, you will become very good at that thing, and maybe like the best in the world at what you do. And if you are the best in the world at what you do, then you become the only solution to the market, which will allow you to earn like crazy amounts of money. So I realized this. I realized that, okay, I need to be very, very conscious about what I spend my time on. And I knew that, okay, you know, playing video games, watching Netflix, etc., these are fun things, but they are not giving me like anything. So I had to remove them. And I would say like I would remove them forever. But like I said, it was too big of a commitment for me. Like, some part of me didn't want to let him go. So I made the agreement with myself, first of all. But then what used to happen is, in moments where I had the most doubt, discomfort, where I was almost like burnt out, when I didn't see any progress, where I was in my weakest moments, then I basically relapsed and I gave in and I started to do these things again. But what you have to understand is that every time when you break your own agreement, then your confidence and self-esteem goes lower and lower and lower. On the other hand, the best way to increase your confidence and your self-esteem is to do the things that you said you were going to do. So I realized, like, because my mental state and my self-esteem went and my confidence was very low, so I knew this wasn't like a good option, a good alternative, because some part of me didn't want to let them go. Yeah, I could let them go for a month, maybe 2, but not for a year. And if you really want to build success, it takes a while for things to start to happen. Because probably all of you guys have seen this visual already, that it is like nothing. And then here, you know, people will think I will quit. But then what starts to happen is like this. Exponential results. And this is what is happening in everything. Like, this is what I realized as well. It takes about a year of really focused effort and hard work in order to see like any results. So whatever path you're going to choose, ask yourself, am I able to do this for more than a year without seeing any results? Because when I first started to explore like different options, you know, like dropshipping, trading, all of these things, I was saying to myself, like, can I do this for more than a year without seeing any results? And with all of them, the answer was no. The only answer, the only thing I was able to do for longer than a year without getting any results was basically building my personal brand, solving problems, sharing the solutions. And yeah, I didn't get any results for like the first 15 months. It took me 15 months to basically get my first paying client for just $100 per month. 15 months. But then from that moment, it took me 7 months in order to get my first 10K month. So 15 months nothing, and then in 7 months, that is half of the time, I went from my first client of $100 per month to my first 10K month. So it really does go quickly like this. So yeah, was I able to basically keep that agreement of permanent sacrifice for like more than a year? No, so it wasn't realistic. Now, the second type of sacrifice is temporary sacrifice. And this is basically, when I heard this first, was the principle of monk mode. You know, removing all of these bad habits for a specific amount of time. And this is a great start because it is easier to commit to. This, I experimented with different lengths. I experimented with 30 days, I experimented with 60 days, 90 days, even 100 days. And I think I've done this, the monk mode, more than like 15 times. And it was really helpful at first because it makes you realize, first of all, it's easier to commit because you don't make like a huge commitment. Like first, if you start like 30 days, like you can do 30 days without. Second of all, you will become very familiar with that voice in your head, because there is a voice inside of your head that is always like trying to make you give into like stimulation, that is always trying to convince you into doing all of these stimulating things because it is good for you, but actually it is like really not. But then you learn how to like deal with that voice and to remove all of that stuff. But when I did the monk mode, the same thing kept happening. Around halfway across the monk mode, even though I wasn't doing these bad habits, I started thinking about these bad habits, because my friends were asking me, hey, do you want to play video games? And I was saying, no, I'm in monk mode, but after monk mode is over, you know, then we can play video games. They were asking like, hey, do you want to come to this festival? I said no, because I'm in monk mode, but after monk mode is over, you know, we can go to that festival. And I started to do things like planning in vacations and stuff like that. But what started to happen is, because if you are thinking about it, because where attention goes, energy flows. So by me thinking about it, I was giving these bad habits my energy, and these urges got bigger and bigger and bigger. My productivity went lower and lower and lower, and it was only a matter of time before I relapsed and before I gave in. And this happened around halfway across of the monk mode, because then you can think about, okay, so then you already start to think about what you will do when the monk mode is over, and you need to have that focus on your business, not on the bad habits. So this was a great way to start, but really didn't work as well. The third type of sacrifice that was for me the most effective, and that is indefinite sacrifice. Sacrificing something until you've reached the goal. And for me, it all started around 15 months ago. No, it was longer. Probably like 17 months ago. I couldn't get rid of playing video games and smoking weed. I couldn't let them go forever. I've let them go like temporary, like halfway across the monk mode, you know, I was thinking about, oh, then I can do this again, then I can do this again. And when the monk mode was over, I was just back at where I started, and I lost all of the momentum. it was until I sacrificed these things, then I had a thought like, okay, I'm just going to sacrifice smoking weed and playing video games until I've hit a goal. And that goal was 10K per month. And after that, like, I was having a lot of peace. Sorry, I cut you off there. I really needed to take a piss because I had some, I had a lot of tea, and yeah, I have some more value to share, so that is why. So if you make this agreement with yourself that you're not going to do all of these bad habits until you've reached your goal, then you don't have to let them go forever. So you know, like that part of you that's like, oh, I cannot let it go. You don't have to do that. You also don't know when you are able to do these habits again, so there isn't a clear time frame where you are living towards, basically. All you know is that if you want to do these bad habits again, you need to achieve your goal. And in order to achieve your goal, you know, you need to take action towards your goal. So rather than to focus like mentally, to think about all of these bad habits, you are starting to think about the action. And when you think about the action, you know, your attention goes to the action, then that will give it energy, and that will grow, because where attention goes, energy flows, and that grows. So by making this agreement, after I made this agreement, there was like so much peace, because yeah, like you don't really have to think about all of that anymore. You just have to focus on the actions. And after I've done this, you know, consistency was effortless, because I just woke up every day and I just focused on my goal. Discipline was irrelevant, because if you're just focused, you don't need to force yourself to do these things. Like, you are just focused. And I was seeing some like crazy momentum. And it took me about a little bit more than 1 year from that moment, when I was focused, until I hit my goal, which was 10K per month. But then a funny thing happened, because as soon as I hit that goal of 10K per month, I didn't want to go back to playing video games and smoking weed. But I had the option, you know, I was able to do that because I allowed myself to do that. But I didn't want to, because I had just so much fulfillment building my business. So for the agreement part and for the basically letting them go, it is very, very, very powerful. But there is also something that you might like, something else it will do as well. Because if you remove all of these types of stimulation, then you will be way happier after all, because all of the simple things like eating food, taking long walks, reading, building your business, talking with family, they will become way much more colorful, way much more meaningful. And yeah, it's such a big, huge benefit. And the reason is because your brain is relative. It is not objective, because it measures the absolute least stimulating from the absolute most stimulating that is present in your life. So if on an objective scale, you know, this is basically like the, wait, let me put it a bit more this way. If this is the most or if this is objectively speaking the least stimulating, and this is objectively speaking like the most stimulating. But so let's say, for example, you're still doing all of these stimulating stuff, smoking weed, playing video games, watching Netflix, etc. And we will do that like right here. Yes, so let's just take one example, that is video games. If that is the most stimulating, and then for example, here you're building your business. Business. Do you write it with? I think this is good. So if you are either, if this is all you do, playing video games and doing the business, then, and let's say this is for example like a 1 out of 10 in stimulation, so that's not stimulating. Not stimulating, where do I write this? Not stimulating. And this is stimulating. And this is basically like a 10. Objectively speaking, and this is then around the 5. Then, but your brain, like I said, it is not objective, it is relative. It measures the most stimulating from the least stimulating. So if here in this example, you know, video games is a 10, that is the most stimulating, and business is a 1. Because it just measures this, if this is all that you're doing. Now, what will happen if you still focus on your business? But you remove all of the stimulating things, and you will replace that by basically doing nothing. Staring at the wall, or sitting in the garden, or like taking long walks, something like that, meditating. So you replace video games by doing nothing at all. Then what will happen is the nothing will be a 1, but the business, it will be a 10, because that will be the most stimulating, because like I said, your brain is relative. So here in this first example, business will feel like a chore. Business will feel like you will play video games and then you think, oh, now I have to work on my business, I have to hop on calls, I have to like work on my laptop, I have to check these things, etc. It will feel like a chore, and consistency and focus and discipline will always require a ton of energy. But if you just remove these things and you replace it with nothing, then business will be the stimulating thing. Then you want to do things. I wanted to record this video. I want to hop on calls with clients. I want to like chat with people in the DMs to find out what their problem is and how I can help them. This becomes the most stimulating thing. And this is like the ultimate productivity hack. So when I'm not feeling about doing the business work, then I basically just like stare at the wall. I just basically do like this. If you do that for 5 minutes, you know, you will become bored and you want to do the business things again. That is how it works. So if you give yourself no other option than to either work on your business or do nothing at all, then you will automatically, like, that is how you overcome procrastination. Because what is procrastination in the first place? It is choosing something that is more stimulating than the thing that you are supposed to be doing. So if there are still like stimulating things in your life, watching YouTube, playing video games, going to parties, etc., chilling with friends, watching Netflix, short form content, all of that stuff, it is still present in your life, then that will be always more stimulating than business. And that is why you procrastinate. But if you just remove all of the things that stimulate you, then business becomes the most stimulating thing. And that is how you will enjoy your life much more, because not only will you enjoy business more, you will also enjoy talks with family more. You will also enjoy like a nice cup of tea more, some sunlight on your face, reading a book. You know, all of these things become more stimulating. So this is the by far the greatest productivity hack that there is. So if you just can keep yourself to the agreement to not do the things that are holding you back until you reach a goal, then it's only a matter of time before you will reach your goal. So yeah, and it is very difficult, but if you can just do this thing, then inevitably you will reach it. And that is why I truly believe I will hit 100k per month. And you know, like maybe it will take a year, maybe it will take 3 years, maybe it will take 5 years. But so what? You know, so what if these things take a lot of time? And then maybe now you might be thinking like, oh, but how can you not do all of these 10 things for like 5 years? And I'm like, you know, like life is better without all of these things anyways, because my ancestors and your ancestors, even like 100 years ago, didn't have all of these forms of stimulation. And if they can live without, so can you, so can I. So I have no problem right now in like sacrificing all of these things. And imagine if I do, imagine if I hit it, you know, like what would my life then look like? I will be looking back at this video and I will think like, oh man, look how far we come, 100k per month. So if you want to do something similar, then go ahead. You know, you can choose the easy mode. Easy mode, I would say, is like removing 3 things that is holding you back the most. Medium mode is maybe like 5 things. If you want to take it to the extreme, you can take like 10 or literally like everything, like I've had as well. And my list of drugs, alcohol, video games, sugar, short form content, Netflix, Spotify, YouTube, unnecessary purchases, and ejaculation or masturbation, my list might be a bit different than your list, because you might be watching anime or something like that. That was like a few of my clients, they were doing like that. You might be struggling with smoking cigarettes or like drinking a bunch of coffee or something like that. So all of the things that are most stimulating to you, these things then you can remove. And you're not going to give away happiness, you're just going to give up that short-term, very short instant gratification. I will promise you that you will be way more happy when you remove all of these things. The difficult things is keeping those things away, even when your mind tries to convince you that you want to do these things. Now, of course, it is difficult to do this alone, and that is also why I started like a community. With some of the people in the mastermind, like we are doing the challenge right now. A lot of people, they were like, oh no, but like, oh, anime, but chocolate, but this, but that, but oh, I was just watching this series, can't I finish it? But like, nope, just stay focused. Like one guy even got rid of his bed, like because it was his biggest distraction. He was laying it for too long. Now that is some next crazy level of determination. So if you want to join me, if you want to join others and want to keep each other accountable, you can join the community with the link in the description. And yeah, like it's completely for free, by the way. There are weekly calls on Wednesday where you can ask questions, when we can keep each other accountable. And then yeah, let's stay focused, let's remove all forms of stimulation, and then quickly, as fast as possible, go to our goal. So yeah, bye.